Hey guys, welcome to the Grow Stack Drive podcast. I'm your host, Ken Joslin, where we help business professionals build confidence, gain clarity, and create community. And I've got my good friend Amberly Lago on today. Amberly, how you doing, girl?
Hey, I'm so grateful to be here with you. I just love talking to you. We were talking before you hit record, and I'm like, oh, I guess, yeah, we were supposed to record, but I just always love talking with you. So thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Amberly is a best-selling author, podcast host, 10X speaker, knows some pretty amazing people. It's so fun hopping on podcasts because we've never really connected or met before. But when you start talking about the Anthony Trucks and the Greg Reeds and the Sharon Lecters and all the relationships that we have in common, it's just like, we've been friends and known each other for a long time. So tell everybody real quick a little about where you're from and what you've got going on right now.
Okay. I was in the health and wellness industry as a fitness trainer for, oh my goodness, 26 years. And before that, I was a professional dancer. So most of my life, I've been either on the dance floor or the gym floor. And after a horrific motorcycle accident that really changed everything, I didn't know at the time just how drastically it was going to change everything. Sometimes when you're going through a really difficult time, you don't know all the blessings that are going to come out of that when you're dealing with all the challenges that you face. And so after that motorcycle accident, I had 34 surgeries. I was told that my leg, they were going to amputate. I had a 1% chance of saving it. So 34 surgeries, months in the hospital. I was told I'd be in a wheelchair the rest of my life, that I would never be in the fitness industry. And I was doing, fitness infomercials with Body by Jake. I was sponsored by Nike. I was nationally recognized as a coach. And to have that completely change, it was like the rug was pulled out from underneath me. And when the doctor told me that I would be permanently disabled and never work again, I was like, but that just can't be the rest of my life. And so it took a lot of grit. And by the grace of God, and pulling up my bootstraps, I love working with people. So I thought, okay, I might not be able to train clients the way that I used to, but I can still work with people and see them reach their goals. Cause that's what really just fills my heart and fuels my passion to keep going. And so I started coaching. I wrote a book called True Grit and Grace, which led me to speaking on stages with people like Anthony Trucks and Mel Robbins and Brendon Burchard and doing a TEDx talk. And so now I am just so grateful to be doing in-person events again.
Yes.
Oh, so excited. So my first in-person event was speaking at a mastermind in Florida, which I love when we can bring people together. And I know you talk a lot about community, and that's a big part for me in coming together, because I don't think we're meant to do things alone. And so any way I can inspire people and give them tools to be more resilient and move forward, whether that's through masterminds or speaking on stages or one-on-one coaching, that is what really keeps me moving. It's what brings me joy. And so that's kind of where I am and how I met you. And on Clubhouse, I mean, Clubhouse is such a great
It's been
opportunity
amazing.
it is. I haven't been there as much lately, but it has been amazing to get in rooms and hear you talk and people like Grant. And the other day, I was on a panel with MC Hammer, and
Come on.
it was crazy because that was the first music. I danced in music videos when I first got started dancing. And that was the first music video I'd ever danced in. I was like,
Wow. Did
yeah.
you tell them you can't touch this?
I was like, can't touch this. That was the song.
One of the things that we talked about earlier, and I want to dig into your story a little bit. One of the things, we do three things at GSD, and that's help business professionals build confidence, gain clarity, and create community. Confidence is huge. We talk a lot about mindset, about crushing limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs, the definition, is something that prohibits us from seeing the potential of our future. You talked about having an accident, and like your life was your body, your physical body, whether it be, dancing, whether it be training. Talk about the process of you hearing 1% chance to save your leg. The doctors, you said you were in the hospital for months. Talk about that process of how you rewired your mindset to go, you know what, I hear what they're telling me, but this is not going to be who I am. And this is not what my future is going to look like.
Yeah, well, it's such a great question. And you're so right that so much of everything we do, it starts with our mindset, it starts with our beliefs. And to be successful, I think it's really about having a positive mindset and being able to quickly shift your perspective. Because
Mm,
for me, I've got an inner critic that can just beat me up. I mean, I got plenty, when the doctors told me we're going to have to amputate your leg, that was the first thing I learned when I woke up out of a coma. And then he said, you only have a 1% chance. I chose to hang on to that 1% chance. And that was my glimmer of hope
mm,
that got me through each surgery one day at a time, which took months. And actually, my last surgery was about a year ago. And I'm done. I'm done with surgery. So I'm like, I'm done with surgeries. But um I could have easily focused on the 99% chance of not being able to save my leg, but all we need is that little glimmer of hope to keep us moving forward. As long as we've got that, we can start to take action steps. But I have to say, there was a moment in the hospital bed when I was laying there, and this may seem shallow, but I was laying there watching, I couldn't sleep because I was in so much pain. My leg was completely
mhm,
exposed. You could see the inside of my leg, and it was held together by these metal rods, and they would have to come in and change these bandages every 3 hours. I remember laying in bed and I didn't sleep, and nothing was on that TV except for some infomercial about how to get a Brazilian butt. And that it hit me like, oh my goodness, I will never look like those girls on the TV again. I will never look like that. I won't ever do any more fitness videos or
mm,
infomercials. Or, I used to do modeling. I was on vitamin labels. When you walked into CVS or Rite Aid, you'd see my picture on, and I thought, is my husband going to ever love me? Am
mm,
I going to be able to chase after my kids? And I started spiraling down into this depression and despair. And it was at that moment that I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to do something about this. I can either go down that road of despair and sink, but I think that resilient people really know when something
mm,
hits you, whether it's an obstacle or a limiting belief, or you're just having a really hard time in life, that it's time to sink or swim, that you can
mm.
go down that road or you can take an action step to get yourself out of that. And so for me, gratitude is what saves me from going down that hole every single time. And I know a lot of people talk about gratitude, but it really did change my life. And when I started to see how much it changed my life was instead of looking down at my leg and looking at all my scars and being in fear and wondering, who's going to am I going to be able to train clients? Is my husband ever going to love me again because of the way I look? Like, I actually had those thoughts.
Mhm.
I noticed when I made a list of everybody that came in to see me in the hospital, and whether they brought me food so I could write them a thank you note, or flowers. I wrote down every nurse's name, every doctor's name, so I would remember them and talk to them and say thank you by their name. And I noticed that shift in me, that I started thinking about
Mm,
all
so
the
good.
things that I was so grateful for instead of what I didn't have or what I couldn't do. And so from that day on, I vowed to think about what I was grateful for, to write down what I was grateful for. And to this for until this day, I still have somebody every single morning. She's like my best friend, an accountability partner, a mentor, whatever you want to call it. And I write to her every single morning.
Mm,
Doesn't matter where I am, doesn't matter what I'm doing, how busy my schedule is. I will write 3 things that I'm grateful for to her, because when you can express your gratitude, it really helps you feel it too. Because it's not easy when you're going
right.
through a really hard time sometimes to be grateful. And people think, oh, well, you're just positive. And I'm like, I'm actually not a very positive person. I have to
Right.
work on
You,
that every day.
I've heard Dave Meltzer talk about the whole gratitude thing, and we actually we just not really published, but just did our own GSD planners, and it's goals,
Mm.
gratitude, and affirmations every single morning. And that it's amazing what happens not just if people go, what's your personality, Ken? You're always in a good mood. You're always passionate. You're always full of energy.
Mm-hmm.
No, not always. There are days where, just like you said, I get up and I go, I look at where we want to go and the obstacle, and I go, you know what? I can choose one of two things. I can either choose to go after that, or I can choose to look at the obstacles and the things of where I am. And then I always lean into that gratitude and those affirmations. So that was a lengthy process for you to be able to kind of get back to where you wanted to be. What do you think is, two questions. Number one, what do you think is the biggest thing that holds people back from taking that step? And number two, how important were some of the relationships that you had in that journey for you?
Oh, I think relationships are everything, first of all. I mean, I could not do it alone. I used to try to do a lot on my own, and that worked for some things. I could do it. I could grit it out and get it done, or as in Texas, we say, get her done. But I have learned the hard way in trying, and it was hard for me to ask for help. I think a lot of times what stops people from going after something is they don't believe in themselves, or they don't believe that they're capable of doing stuff. And I had doctors tell me, you are going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. When I decided to change careers and write a book, I had a lot of people, and I'm sure it was out of, they wanted to protect me, like, oh, girl, you are the fitness
Right.
girl. You don't need to try to write a book. You didn't even go to college. You better stay in your lane. And I think one of the biggest motivators for me is when somebody tells me, you are not going to be able to do that. You
Mm,
can't do that. There's no way. And I'm like, really? I'm going to prove to myself that I can do it. And so I think that one thing that has helped me a lot is having the right people in my life, surrounding yourself with people who are positive and passionate. And, our friend Greg Reed talks about this all the time, getting counsel versus
yes,
opinion.
advice. Yep.
Because, there's plenty of people out there that I, could say, I really want to write a book, who have never written a book. And they'd say, oh, no way, you can't do that. You'll never
Right.
be able to do that. But when I went to someone who had published over 70 books, he's like, okay, you want to write a book? Well, these are the steps that you take. And so you go to counsel and you get counsel. And so I also think that it can be overwhelming when you have these big goals. For me, for instance, in the hospital, if I would have focused on, I mean, lost about 23 pounds of muscle. I weighed nothing. I had bed sores. So I went from shooting a fitness video the day before my accident to now I'm laying in a bed. I can't even use the bathroom on my own. I have to, I've got bed sores. And if I would have thought about, I want to be a marathon runner again, I probably would have sunk into a depression. What I thought was, I want to be able to use the bathroom on my own by my
Good.
and not use a bedpan. So I know that's probably a little bit too much information, but I'm getting real specific about how it was for me, like how I was able to start walking again. And somebody asked me, well, how did you learn to walk again? And I said, well, first I had to decide that I was going to do it and commit to doing everything that I could every single day. Nobody is going to walk for me. In fact, I
Right.
had a lot of doctors saying you'll never walk again, but I was determined, and I had fear. When I remember a physical therapist came over to the house. I had a hospital bed downstairs, and she goes, okay, move your leg off the bed. And I couldn't even move it.
Mm,
And I thought, oh my gosh, am I paralyzed? My leg won't move. There was this disconnect. But the next day, I focused on it and I was determined and I tried and I visualized and I committed and I took action. And soon enough, I was able to raise my leg off the bed. Then I set a goal of, okay, I'm going to stand up for 3 seconds at a time because the pain was unbearable. And then one thing led to another where I would set these small, attainable goals. And when we do that, we can achieve those goals and we're not discouraged. We can celebrate our small victories along the way. And I think that's really important to have big dreams and big goals, but I think it's really important to set these small, attainable goals as well.
yeah, my buddy Jeff Finster, the CEO at Everbowl, Jeff talks about win stacking. He's like, just pick some small ones, which is exactly what you just described. Talk about those small goals. Like, I couldn't move my leg. I want to move it. Couldn't get my leg over the side of the bed. And you said something that I think that's very important that people need to understand. Like, there was so much pain, it was hard for me to do it. Like, there's going to be some goals that people try to go through, and it's going to be painful. Like, it's just
Mm-hmm.
not going to come easy. But talk about the momentum. John Maxwell talks in 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership about the law of the big mo. Talk about momentum and how even in the hospital, you begin to gain momentum and how that really caused your belief lid to rise that, hey, maybe I can even do more than some of the goals that I've set for myself.
Yeah, I think that that momentum builds confidence in you.
That's good.
It's taking those action steps every day. I know for me that, like, when I was asked to do a TED Talk, I thought that I'd be so excited. I'd be jumping up and down. Let me tell you, I was like, I curled up in a little ball on the sofa and I was like, they want me to do a TED Talk. Oh my goodness, what is the most important message of my life? And I've got 14 minutes to share it. And what helped me the most gain momentum in just preparing for it was taking an action step, whether
Mhm.
that was, okay, I'm going to take time to write out my thoughts and what is the most important lesson of my life, or whether was pacing around in my tiny little office here and practicing what I was going to say. But I think that momentum, once you start to do something and you're like, okay, I did that. I went through that. I jumped out of my comfort zone and it was scary, but I did it. And that's like a little notch on your belt for, okay, I've got that little confidence. And that
Mhm.
can start really as simple as doing something that we can all do, whether no matter what you're doing, is in the morning when your alarm goes off, don't push snooze and you get out of bed. That's like
Yes.
momentum. You're like, I'm not going to push new. I'm accountable. I did what I said I was going to do. I said I was going to wake up at 5 o'clock this morning and I didn't push snooze. I got up. That builds your momentum. It
Right.
builds your confidence, and it starts stacking those small wins as something as simple as getting out of bed in the morning. And
Mhm.
everybody can do that. And those little things start to add up. And that momentum, we were talking about setting goals and building goals. I remember when I wrote my book and I had a publisher, and the publisher was like, we don't do any marketing for you. So if you want people to read your book and get it out there, then you're going to have to market and brand yourself. And I was like, oh gosh, how do I do that? Now, let me tell you, Ken, I didn't even own a computer 4 years ago. I had no idea how to work a computer. I got invited to speak at this event and they needed me to send them a headshot. I didn't even know. I borrowed my husband's computer. I didn't even know how to attach an email or a picture to an email. And I remember when I asked him, he's like, oh, what do you want now? He didn't want to take the time to teach me. And I burst into tears and I was like, you know what? That's it. I'm going to the Mac store. I'm going to buy my own computer. I'm going to take a class. And I would raise my hand every single time the teacher was like, anybody got any questions? I'm like, yes, yes, because I wanted to learn and I wanted to keep building that momentum. And, I remember just going through that process the publisher was like, you have to do your own branding and marketing. And I was like, I had a goal of, in a year, I had to, when my book was published, I wanted to get 10,000 followers on Instagram so I could do a swipe up. So I set that small goal. Now, 4 years ago, 10,000 was pretty
A
good on
lot. Yeah.
Instagram. Now it's
Yeah.
like you need 10 million.
Right. Yeah, I had one of my friends hit me up yesterday. Hafid hit me up yesterday and sent me a message. And then Kate, my daughter was in the car, my 13-year-old. We went to see a Black Widow movie, and she showed up, she goes, Dad, she has 2.7 million followers. That's really, really cool. And I'm like, 2.7. Yeah, okay, right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like before, I was like, okay, these little goals that we set. And also I remember thinking, okay, once I get verified, then I've made it. And it's like, no, not really,
Right.
because I've never made it. I want to constantly keep learning and
Let me
growing.
let me ask you a question. I heard TD Jakes do a message. Half of my background, the last 25 years, I spent half of that in full-time vocational ministry. I heard TD Jakes do a message one time at a big pastors conference, and he said, The title of his message was A Place Called There. And he said, if you're always looking to get to the destination and you don't enjoy the journey, it's going to be empty when you get there. That's been over 20 years ago, and I'll never forget that. Talk about the journey for you. I mean, obviously, you're pretty big time now. You do have a blue check mark. You are speaking on big stages. You are doing some really, really cool things, and you've got some really cool relationships. Talk about the journey. Talk about you finding joy in the journey and the importance
I
of that.
cannot believe you're just saying this right now. You know why? I have the sticky note on my computer right now. It's called Joy for the Journey. I was talking to my friend, John Gordon, and he's like, Amberly, your next book, you talk a lot about finding joy in the journey and along the process. He goes, I think you need to write your next book. It should be titled Joy for the Journey. So thanks to John, my buddy John, he's like, he named my next book, and I have that taped on my screen. It's the only sticky note I have on my screen is like Joy for the Journey. And I think it's so important to find that joy in the journey. I just was training a client right before we got on here. And I was telling her about how, it's so important to really find the things that do bring you joy and bring more of those into your life, because there is if you're all about, I'm going to be happy when I get to do a TED talk, or I'm going to be happy when my book is published, you're right. It's going to be empty. The magic happens when you're building these relationships on your journey, when you're, figuring things out. For me, when I can finally figure something out, especially with technology, I'm like, woohoo, I actually figured that out, and celebrating those small wins along the way. But I think it's also so important I loved you did a post on Instagram about resting and recovering and
my 4 R's for Sunday. Yeah. Rest, relax, replenish, and refocus. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that, because for most of my life, it was all about the grit, all about the hustle, all about you just got to work really hard. And through my journey of ending up back in the hospital on life support because I went septic, because I was just pushing through a kidney stone that went septic. And I learned that was actually the scariest moment of my life, because a doctor came in and said, you would have died if you would have waited one more day. And so I've learned that it's not all about the hard work. It's about giving ourselves the grace and taking time to recover and replenish, and making sure that, as entrepreneurs, we work so hard, and our hours are a little bit different from somebody with a 9-to-5 job. And it's so important to remind yourself to take time to add some of the things that really bring joy, because my work brings a lot of joy, but I could do that all day. I got to remember to go outside, get in nature, go to the gym, move my body, because that's what makes me feel good too.
It's the old story about Abraham Lincoln. If you had 6 hours to chop down the tree, what would you do? And he responded, he said, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. Like that's
powerful.
We have to be sharp. We have to take care of ourselves. You talked about something. I want to hit on this for our last couple of minutes. You said, I talked about joy for the journey. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine this week, and they were talking about happiness. And I said, the word happy or happiness is rooted from the word circumstance or happenstance, which comes from circumstance. So we're happy when external things around us are going well. Joy is something that's internal and causes an external action or reaction to those around us. One of the main ways for us to have joy in our life is through those gratitude and the affirmations that you talked about earlier, because joy and happiness are two completely different things. And I'm glad I co-signed on John's Joy for the Journey book for you. Joy for the title of your book, Joy for the Journey. Talk about how joy, because you're one of those people, when you get around, you're like, dude, this chick's got it. Like, you can tell there's something different about her. Talk about what joy meant to you through this process, and how joy attracts and draws people to you and really opens up their heart and their life for the message that you have.
Oh, well, thank you. You are just so kind. I think it's when people are like, "Oh, well, how do you find joy?" And I think that, like you said, it comes from within. But I think about what brought me so much joy as a kid, what really lit me
Mm,
up. And it was back at the Dairy Queen when I was 6 years old, 7 years old. I don't know why my mom let me do this, but every Friday night after the football game, they would turn the jukebox on and I would dance all night long on the tabletop.
mm,
I would tap dance and it would bring joy to people's faces. I would see them smiling and they were clapping and then they would start dancing along. And I think that joy is contagious. And I really thought about why I love what I do. Like I love being at conferences and speaking on stages because I love people. And I think that when you come together and you share what brings you joy, it magnifies it. um, so I think it's really important to think about the things that you've done that were younger that brought so much joy into your life. What are the things that you really just love doing? And I guarantee it's probably connected to something that you do in life now that could lead to your purpose, that could lead
mm,
to what you do. But the thing is we are all capable of it. We just have to sometimes hear somebody say, well, it doesn't really matter what your circumstances are. It's how you choose to look at things. It's our perspective, our perception of it. And so I think you talked about gratitude again. The easiest and the quickest way to shift your perspective is to think about gratitude. Look, I get up and every morning I'm still in pain. So I have a nerve
mm,
disease that as a
mhm,
result of the accident that causes me pain. And I could easily let that make me bitter. Or I can ask, what am I learning from this? How can I make my
mm,
life better? Who can I reach out to be of service today so I don't get caught up in self pity and why me, but say, well, what's next? Well, maybe I can't do things the way I used to do, but I can find, joy and do things that bring me such fulfillment in a different way now. So just because, and a lot of people get caught up in that victim mentality, and we can choose to be the victor of our life.
I love that, girl. Amberly, what's the best place for people to be able to connect with you?
You can reach out to me at amberlylago.com if you want to learn the tips that I teach on how to be resilient. Just text me the word grit, GRIT, to 818-214-7378. And I'm hang out on Instagram mostly at Amberly Lago Motivation, and just send me a message or screenshot this episode so I can share it. And Ken, I'm so grateful for you.
Awesome,
Thank
girl.
you. I
Oh
always love
man.
talking to you. So thank you for this
My
opportunity to share with your audience.
absolutely my pleasure. Maybe we'll get to hop back on Clubhouse again. It's been such June was so crazy. I think I was home for like 7 days, maybe 8 days. The whole month it was just here, there, Miami, San Diego, Scottsdale, Utah, back, and then it was just like it was a whirlwind. So I haven't had much time to be able to get on Clubhouse either. So but I do love to be on there and be with people like you and Anthony and to be able to get some time with people like that. Guys, listen, Amberly Lago, she shared at True Grit and Grace on Instagram. Her text number is 818-214-7378. What was the word they need to text you?
Grit.
Grit. Text grit to Amberly. Follow her on Instagram, guys. Shoot her a DM. Let her know you heard her here on the GSD podcast and just the difference that she made. Girl, I love your joy. Love your countenance. Love your passion and energy for life. I love how you took a circumstance that most people would just let literally destroy them and rob them of their future and their potential. And you flip that on its head, and now you're making a difference in people's lives.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And I hope to talk to you again on Clubhouse, or
Most
even better
definitely.
yet, I hope to see you at one of your masterminds soon.
Most well, I'll have you on stage. I promise you that we'll have you on stage. We're working on some really cool people for the January one. Can't tell you what their names are, but it rhymes with Ed Milet and some other
Oh
people like
my
that. So
gosh.
I'm working on it. So
It
we're working
rhymes
right
with
now. Ed
he's like
Milet, do you
my
like that? I know, right? So we're working on
Love
that. We've got
him.
we've got some really cool people that we're working with right now for our January boot camp. So it's gonna be really, really cool. So
Well, you're
anyway, Amberly,
awesome.
we appreciate you, girl. Thank you so much for joining us today. Guys, go check her out, Amberly Lago on Instagram. Text her 818-214-7378. Text the word grit. My name is Ken Joslin. I have the honor and privilege of being your host here on the Grow Stack Drive podcast, where we help business professionals build confidence, gain clarity, and create community. Y'all have a blessed day. Thanks.